So this is probably gonna be a bit longer video, which I'm called to record also in Czech because that's my original language. And if you don't know A Course in Miracles, it's this thick book that has been channeled, I believe, in the 60s or 70s by a psychiatrist called Helen Schucman, who was quite shocked that a voice started speaking to her and told her to take notes of this Course in Miracles. And I heard about this book first from Eckhart Tolle, a spiritual teacher who referred to it multiple times, but I was always like, sounds weird, Course in Miracles, what can that be? And I didn't pay much attention to it. But last year when I was visiting Prague, because I lived in Denmark for the past 5 years, I stumbled upon it in a bookstore, and there was one piece of the Czech version of the book, and I felt drawn to it. But I remember thinking like, oh, but it's such a thick book and it's quite expensive and I don't need more books. But like, I ended up buying it and started reading it. And the text itself is quite, for the mind, it's quite not understandable. But when you're reading it, there is a deeper layer within you that gets the words, and the words are just pointers. They are not so important, but they are supposed to point you into the direction of seeing the real world and realizing what is not real and fake and kind of ego made. And it's, one might say it's quite Christian in the terminology, but it's not really Christian, although there is some reference to the Holy Spirit or Jesus Christ and of course God himself. So back to my original story. I started reading the book, and at that point I've been in a relationship for 5 years, which was a relationship that I manifested because I was really craving a romantic partner that would kind of tick all the boxes, like being a musician, having the same sense of humor, being kind, and all of these things that one can kind of project into the world and hope to find that kind of a relationship. And I've been reading the book and like using kind of colors to mark important things that I found interesting or like touching, or they activated something deep within me. And I must say, like, at first the book is quite like, it will draw you in and you'll get really excited about the truths that are in it. But then at some point your ego might be like, let's not continue with this book. I don't think I have so much time or energy for this. And it will really try to get you to stay away from it, because the main goal of this book, I would say, is to shatter the egoic perspective of the world we've created. And that ties to my relationship point, because there is a chapter or multiple chapters on relationships, and there's something called a special relationship and a holy relationship. And as I understood it, the special relationship is with someone, usually a romantic partner, that we placed kind of on a pedestal, and our ego wants to gain something through this relationship, whether it's like self-love, or more that someone acknowledges us, or that someone adds something to us, so we don't feel like we're lacking in value. And that's what most of the relationships on this earth are based on, basically, now. Because you can see it in the movies, in pop songs, in our culture, with the huge like romantic idea of like the weddings and being with someone forever and ever, and fulfilling each other and giving each other happiness, and it can only be this person and no other person, because this is my other half and I can't live without them, and if they go, I'll die, and stuff like that. And you can really sense this comes from a deeply rooted need of our ego to be enhanced, to be important, to be acknowledged, and to never die. And as I was reading about this, the special relationship and the holy relationship, I realized that in my own romantic relationship, I am quite content and everything's quite nice, and we're having some common goals and we support each other, but the spiritual layer is not quite right. There's something missing. There's something that feeds into this egotistical need for approval, whether it's in sex, whether it's in messaging each other, whether it's, I don't know, talking about stuff. The underlying thing, or like the motive for all of these things, is usually to gain something. And it's very tricky because you might not see it at first. You might think, oh, but me and my partner, we love each other. We're here for each other. We support each other. We enhance each other. We help each other. Yes, but if you look deep enough, you'll probably find that you do all these things in order to gain something. Maybe it's to gain the same things you're giving to them. You're expecting to gain it back. Or you're expecting that one day they'll marry you and you'll gain some safety, or one day you'll have a kid and that will be like your project, and that way you will kind of keep yourself going forever. And the purpose of the holy relationship, which is not necessarily another relationship with another person, but might be, is to be absolutely selfless and joined in a common goal that is not rooted in the ego. And when I was reading these chapters, I was thinking to myself, there is something like inherently wrong with the way we're doing relationships, but not many people want to see it. We're still like continuing this cycle of romantic ideals and fairy tales, and we're kind of ignoring that most of the relationships fall apart in the end up in some kind of divorce, or really bad fight, and suddenly the love you had for the other person can switch like a light into hate. And if this love you have for the person can instantly turn into anger, hate, bitterness, something negative, it was not love in the first place. And it's tough to recognize this in yourself, because we are so used to and so programmed to that this is love. But if you recognize this, your kind of the whole idea of why we have relationships falls apart, and you are kind of left with not much, to be honest. And why this book, why I called this video the title I've called it, is because when I was reading these chapters, I had a really deep wish, really from my soul, to add the spiritual goal to the relationship I'm currently having, in order for it to transform into the holy relationship. Which the book says that if you invite the Holy Spirit into your relationship with this particular wish, it wastes no time, comes immediately, and transforms your relationship from the special to the holy. Well, one thing I didn't count on, and my ego didn't count on, and I had no idea about, is that when I did that and invited the Holy Spirit into my relationship, it could also mean that this particular relationship is not to be transformed into the holy relationship and is just to be released. And soon after I did this, I woke up in the middle of the night at like 2 a.m. with a clear knowing that we are about to split with my partner, that there is no other way, no use for working on anything or trying to find a way, trying to reason with it, trying to change it. That the highest form of love that I've invited into my life is guiding me towards a breakup, because his way of further evolving is through having kids, and my way of further evolving is through creating. And if any one of us attempts to kind of adapt to the other one's mission, they would have to give up their own, and that's not love. That's sacrifice that leads into suffering. And of course, because I thought I loved my partner, I struggled a lot with this thought, and I tried to avoid it, ignore it, tried to tell myself this was just a weird dream and tomorrow it will disappear and it will be better. Yet I kept waking up every night at 2 a.m. with the same kind of knowing, as firm as this book, telling me we're about to split and telling me to do it as soon as possible, and even guiding me into some other relationship that I was like, what? I don't even want to be in that relationship. And it just didn't go away, and I went through a period of really being mad, being angry, begging the universe not to do it, talking about it with my boyfriend, talking about it with a psychologist, with a psychic, with everyone. And in the end, I came to the conclusion that no one is able to solve this for me. It was my wish to invite the Holy Spirit into my life, and this is what came out of it, and I just have to respect it, because I kind of have no choice. If I don't respect it, if I try to have it my way, I will keep waking up at 2 a.m. like in a panic. I might, for example, go through abortion if I force myself to have kids, which I felt intuitively that it would not be right for me. But it would also not be right for him to not have kids right now. So it was just as clear as day that the highest form of love is letting go. And no matter how much I fought it, after 3 months, he decided that this can no longer continue, and we kind of went our separate ways. I had to move out back to Czech from Denmark, kind of from one day to the other. I had no idea what I'm doing, where I would live, but the universe came with a solution and found me a really nice flat in Prague, near the river, in a beautiful area where there is a lot of like this creative energy. A lot of great Czech writers lived there. And I went through hell, literal hell, because I could not explain this to anyone. And I tried, but people were like, but you could always have chosen to stay, or you could have done something, or this is bullshit. You always have free will, or like you have made a big mistake, and even like blaming me that I am selfish for making this decision, when for me it was like such a huge letting go and sacrifice of something that I really wanted and manifested and held on so tight. And now I'm in a phase where it's kind of up and down. Like one day I'll go through a really strong wave of emotions. I would cry, I would be really down, I would miss him terribly. I even had to block him on social media because I couldn't handle the thought of like him finding happiness somewhere else, even though I know that's the purpose why I'm doing this. It's because I love him, but not in the egotistical way. I love him in the way that I want him to be fulfilled, and I know his greatest fulfillment would be kids, which he has told me multiple times. And for some reason it just didn't work out for us, and he's meant to have it with someone else. So this was like the highest form of sacrifice for me, and also the death of ego, which I can sense now that I'm going through the waves of like the ego being really, really strong and fighting against it and wanting to have it its way, and being angry at him and being angry at myself and at the Holy Spirit, and everything's fucked up. And then I feel this release of like that this is guiding me towards what I always wanted, which was to be free of the crazy roller coaster of the desires and needs and unfulfilled wishes, and the love that turns to hate or turns to something nasty when it's not receiving what it wants. And I know I'm on the right path. I know it from my heart. I'm doing the lessons from this book, because this book not only contains the huge amount of spiritual text, but it contains a lesson for every day, which is very simple, very short. For example, today's lesson is, I'll read it to you. It's lesson number 9. I see nothing as it is now. And you're basically taught to look at things around you and realize that what you see is not actually the true nature of the thing. Because our minds, thinking that we are a subject, an I that sees the world, they assign meaning to things and people and events. And unless or until we get rid of this subjective view of like, this is me and I am deciding things and I am moving through this world and I am creating, we will see the things around us as we want to see them and not as they are. And basically the course is supposed to teach you seeing reality as it is, so in a new light. But in order to do that, it has to shatter your ego first, and that hurts a lot. But again, who is hurting? It's not you, the eternal essence, the force that is always there, the creation. It is the ego that hurts, that doesn't want to die, doesn't want to accept that its way is the small way, and that there is something much bigger that the ego cannot control. But the truth is, you don't have control over anything. If you think about 5 biggest events of your life, did you have control over them? Did you plan it? Was it like, on this and this day this will happen and I will feel like that? No. We don't have control, and we have to accept that our small will can never reach as high as the grander will of the Creator. So this was my story about transforming special relationship into a holy relationship. If you've experienced something similar, or are going through it, or are just starting with the Course in Miracles, just know that you're not alone, and the ego will fight back, and you'll feel like you're dying, and you'll feel like your whole world is falling apart, and that everything is shattered, and maybe you'll even feel like you cannot continue in this path. But just know that it's the final deathly scream of what you actually don't want in your life, and you're getting out of it, and you're breaking free, and there is something on the other side that is much, much, much greater, and much more joyful, and much more free, and much more fulfilling. But we have to let go the things that we're holding on to, if we mean it, and if we really want to go through with it, because this is not a path for everyone. Like they say that you're even lucky if you hear about enlightenment in your life, and if you reach it, then you're maybe one of 10 million of people that manage to kind of uncover the true reality of this world. So don't despair, or like despair if you need to. I am crying maybe every other day for what I've lost, but I also believe that I'm gaining much more, but it's not the egotistical gain. It's more losing the blindfold that was kind of preventing me from seeing the beauty of this world. So write me in the comments if you want to talk about it, or if you're going through some difficulties of your own, and much love from this tree cave.